Euthanasia, Malevolence, Masquerading as Mercy. Okay, that seems really depressing and terrible. Like, why would we talk about this on a Monday? So I just want to give you guys a little backstory so you guys can know like what got me interested in this. So, when I was 5 years old, I saw my first Holocaust movie. And I remember going back to my room and thinking like, how do people get to the point where they just want to, do a whole genocide, see people as less than themselves? And I remember thinking this, and please don't judge me, I was only 5, but I thought, oh, Germans are evil. But then I thought, wait, I'm for German, and I wouldn't do that. So what gets people to that point? What gets people to take step by step to a point where they think that it is mercy, it is kindness to do away with someone's life? So throughout history, societies have been called to answer ethical questions. One question has been shown to be reoccurring every few generations. Euthanasia beats at our society's door, and humanity must answer. Is premature death mercy or malevolence? Are there certain lives not worth living? And if so, who has the right to determine which life is to be extinguished? For euthanasia is a social, not a private act. This research will delve into the statistics, cultural and medical changes, and the detrimental ramifications of euthanasia in Canada. The United States and Canada are not only geographical neighbors, but also cultural neighbors, kind of like an annoying sibling that they copy everything you do. So whether we like it or not, statistics make it probable that we will follow in Canada's footsteps if we also legalize euthanasia. So we have the question of how should one deal with the sick, vulnerable, and needy? To find the answer, man must ascend into his very foundation of right and wrong regarding suicide, causality versus culpability, compassion, and dignity. Okay, so palliative care is a form of medical care which provides symptom relief and physical, emotional, and spiritual care. We found that the lack of palliative care has been shown to increase depression, feelings of hopelessness, and inclination towards MAID. So MAID is medical assistance in dying. Canada has legalized it, and today it is the 5th leading cause of death in Canada. So to get approved for MAID, it takes 90 days. That seems like a long time, but when you look at how long it takes people to get palliative care, 167 days to go to a pain treatment clinic, 213 days for long-term care home. Veterans disability claims, 273 days. Assertive community treatment, 454 days. All of a sudden, 90 days doesn't seem like too long of a time. There are people who are on the waiting list for life-necessary, like life-saving surgery, and they're waiting for years, so they give up hope and they decide to apply for MAID, and that track is expedited. So we see over here, there was a study that looked into how illness burden, lack of palliative care increases distress, that leads to depression and hopelessness, which leads people to MAID request and provision. When people have to, lots of people use the extreme cases. Someone is terminally ill, it's unmerciful to make them continue living in this state. But what we find when we look at the paperwork people fill out for the reasons why they're requesting MAID, we see a big percentage in isolation or loneliness, emotional distress, anxiety, fear, or existential suffering, perceived burden on family, friends, and caregivers. Because once death becomes a right, it leads to it becoming a duty. Many people who say that they want to continue living with mental or physical illness say that they feel guilty for doing so, because that puts a lot of emotional and economic strain on their family. According to Statistics Canada, 41% of Canadians living under the poverty line have a disability. A number of articles have highlighted the palliative care underservicing of Indigenous people for a host of reasons. Similar studies have done the same for mental illness, homelessness, and other vulnerable populations. So Canada seems like a very, far away from here, it doesn't affect us. However, this survey was done at GCU, and students were asked Do you agree or disagree with terminating the lives of terminally ill kids without parental consent? Out of the 135 students who were asked this, 81% said they agree. Only 48 said they don't disagree, 6 said they agree and disagree, I guess it depends on the circumstance, and 3 said conflict. So in total, 6 plus 3 plus 81, 90 out of 135 students were okay, and depending on the circumstance, with kids being euthanized without parental consent. And we see this happening in countries like Belgium and Norway, where children are being euthanized involuntarily. And if a parent says that they want to take their child to get a second opinion in another country, they are an irresponsible parent. So euthanasia was legalized in Canada in 2016. Each year since then, the number of people who have been euthanized has increased drastically. By 2023, from 2016, the number reached 60,238 deaths. Euthanasia masquerades as compassion, but it is disdain of the unideal life. It is neglect of medicine, technology, counseling, companionship, and other forms of assistance. In my research, I found statistics of growing numbers of individuals opting for euthanasia, medical and societal changes in perspective towards the vulnerable, physically ill, mentally ill, elderly, and impoverished. A shift from palliative care towards euthanasia. There was a woman who was a Paralympic veteran, a Canadian veteran. She went for her veteran disability, and it was taking too long, so the people at the office told her, have you considered MAID? So the society has started to normalize it so much that it's become an easy reference for medical staff. There's a change in the cultural view on suicide, a narrowing of societal view on who has a life worth living, increase in number of family encouraged and medically encouraged death, an increase in the exploitation of the physically and mentally vulnerable. Proponents of euthanasia argue that it is an act of mercy to end one's suffering and that death should be an individual right. They state that people should not be forced to live with a reduced quality of life. Others argue that the abundance of pleasure and or the lack of pain doesn't give life worth. Instead, it's meaning that should motivate life. Head of pre-World War II Vienna Hospital and survivor of 4 concentration camps, Viktor Frankl writes, it later emerged that even suffering contributes to meaning and is part of the meaning of life. And finally, it was seen that even illness, even incurable illness, does not give anyone the right to judge a human life as being unworthy of life and to deny them the right to live. We have gotten to the point to respect autonomy so much that we're starting to negate the oath we have to take, the Hippocratic oath, to do no harm. Everything has to be done in a balance. So people say, how can you force someone to live who doesn't have the desire to live? But that's what psychiatrists and psychologists have been doing for ages. When people want to commit suicide, we try to stop them. We try to offer counseling, care, companionship. And statistics say that most of us will experience at least one severe bout of depression in our lifetime. One of the main symptoms of cardinal depression is suicidal tendencies. So if each one of us or someone that we love will go through that, would we want there to be an easy eject button right by them so that they can press at any time? Or would we want to offer them and ourselves in that future scenario every possible alternative? Any help and companionship and pain medication or psychiatric medication we can. This is something that throughout history we've had to ask ourselves again and again. We've seen it happen with pre-World War II Europe and America when eugenics was on the rise. This is an advertisement that the Reich had said that the Reich was using. It's Lebensunwürdiges Leben, life unworthy of life. They were showing how much it cost the Reich to keep a physically ill person or a mentally ill person well and fed. This was putting a toll on their economics and on their resources. Over here in these 3 pictures, you have victims of the T4 program. Before Germany turned their attention to the Jews in Europe, they first wanted to clean up their own country. They went and they looked to see where are the people who are struggling the most mentally and physically. They rounded them up and quietly gassed them with the same chemicals that would later be used to gas the Jews. It was an economic decision. But I believe that these people are worthy of our love, our care, and our protection. We should end suffering, not the sufferer. We should try to come alongside our society, to come alongside our vulnerable and our needy, and offer them the best that our society can offer. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Yeah, Shakun.
How does this apply to the United States specifically? Like,
Right.
is there some kind of growing concern that's happening in the
Yes.
United States that is transferring over to Canada as well? Or like,
Right. Yeah, so we've seen a trend that usually what the US does, and then what is followed by Canada. And then if Canada does something, usually the US will follow. But, and this is already starting to happen with 10 states in the US having already legalized euthanasia. So if this hasn't yet been approved nationwide, but a law determines a lot our view on morality. So our interpretation of morality usually follows a definition that the law decides on. Yeah. Yes.
So you brought up World War II propaganda, or propaganda. Would you say Canada is employing similar tactics, just not war-based?
Yes, I think so. If you listen to the arguments that are said for euthanasia, the doctors say, so they say it's an act of mercy. That these lives are, they don't have the same quality of life that you and I might have. So because of that, we should enforce them to continue living that way. And it's an act of mercy to kill them, to put them out of their suffering. And that is almost word for word what Nazi doctors said in the Nuremberg trials. Yeah.
Do you truly believe that there really is no form of mercy in killing somebody that is suffering on a constant basis?
I think you have extreme situations, but most of these cases aren't extreme situations. The extreme situations are used as advertisement to open the door for a law to be put into place. And after that, the definition of what is suffering that can't be tolerated is increased, and its borders keep spreading. In the UK, only this year they've legalized euthanasia. The reason why they haven't wanted to legalize euthanasia is because they understood that the law is put in place to protect us from exploitable circumstances. For example, there's a law to not speed or to not steal. However, none of us would blame someone who was speeding because his wife was about to give birth, so he's hurrying fast, he goes way over the speed limit, and the cop stops him. Everyone would be like, please, let him go. Like, the law shouldn't apply to him. Or if a mother steals to feed her starving child, none of us would blame her as well. But we wouldn't ask the government to completely do away with those two laws. That's the same with euthanasia. In the UK, a few cases would come across their table with people who had taken it upon themselves to euthanize patients who were going through extreme circumstances, but none of them were brought to trial. The law isn't put in place because most of us are bad. The law is put in place because there are a few bad people in society who can take advantage of the very people they're supposed to protect. And the hand that is sworn to heal shouldn't be the hand that does away with life. Yeah, but are there any questions? Any more questions? Okay, if not, thank you so much.